Good evening, kids. Welcome to another episode of The Abyss, episode 38. I am your host, as always, The Eternal Abyss. I want to welcome each and every one of you. How is everybody doing? I hope everyone's doing okay. I hope everybody can hear me okay. I've had to rearrange my setup a little bit. Pardon me. So I had to reposition things, rework things, rewire things, use different devices that I don't normally use for these kind of setups. So I had to kind of just reinvent the whole wheel here in a matter of speaking. So I hope everyone can hear me okay and everything works smoothly. And so far, I believe that the stream is holding pretty nicely. If I need to raise my gain, I will. Just let me know, and we'll do what we can to make sure that this stream works smooth. Everybody can hear me okay, and we all have a fun time, of course, because that's really the main purpose of this as well. It's just to have a little chit chat, spend some time together. And speaking of spending time together, I want to welcome each and every one of you here that are on the various platforms. If you are watching, I want to welcome everyone. I want to welcome everyone primarily bitwave.tv. I want to welcome those on dlive.tv. I also want to welcome those on Periscope, as well as YouTube. And before I start, of course, I just want to say, please support conservatives like myself, who are being thrown asunder by social media, the mainstream media, vilified day in and day out. We're not that bad. I don't think we're that bad. I think we're a pretty nice group of people, you know. Don't mind me. I also have my fluids here that I'm sipping as well. So there are a couple things that are really coming down the pipeline that have been exploding all over the news. Let's get right into the meat and potatoes of it. Of course, one of the biggest news items that came out today. And actually, you know what? Let me rewind. I want to say I'm happy today about the news item that I'm going to talk about. I'm happy in one way. I'm cautiously optimistic in another. And there's a sliver of not that happy at the same time, and I'll get into every aspect of it. So one big thing that is happening today is that President Trump is signing an executive order that's basically going to be removing the liability protections of corporations and social media platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, YouTube/Google, things like that, where they have been portraying themselves and using the guise of an open platform, an open forum, to editorialize, to engage in political advocacy, and to act as a pack of sorts, to act as an agent for a political cause. And this is a problem, because if you claim to be an unbiased and a nonpartisan platform, where you're just saying, you know what, I'm going to have this platform where people can come in, go and enjoy the platform, have an open discussion, an open exchange of ideas, then you should not be interjecting yourself into it. That's really what it boils down to. But you have Facebook, for example, that during one, I believe it was a congressional hearing, where they themselves essentially said, we're a publication. You know? it's eye opening when you hear stuff like that. And I don't know if that was intentional. It may have been a slip. It may have been a slip on the part of Zuckerberg when he said that. But essentially, what it boils down to is that that's what these companies are doing. They're acting as publications. They're acting as publications, and as such, they should not be privy to the protections that being an open platform enjoy. They shouldn't be enjoying those perks. If they're gonna act as editors, and editorialize their content, if they're gonna act as publishers and they're going to inject their own personal agendas and aspirations and everything into the platform that they run, then they should be open to liability. Now, this is the thing that makes me happy. I am happy to hear that finally there's some action being taken. That this executive order is gonna basically open the floodgates for lawsuits to come in. Excuse me. Just need to wet my whistle. I'm happy to hear about this sort of thing, because it's deserved. It's truly deserved. These companies, and I'm not looking at it from a vengeful point of view. It's not like I want to see these companies taken down because I feel slighted or something like that. I just feel that if you're going to be behaving in a certain way, then you shouldn't pretend you're not. You shouldn't say you're a duck when you're obviously not a duck. And you shouldn't be eating the breads that the seniors give at the park bench, if you're not a duck and you just want to pretend you're a duck. I know it's a very stupid analogy, but the point comes across is that they should not be reaping benefits from pretending there's something they're not. And also, there's government has provided, I'm sure, some funding to them and things in the past, and that's also something that I don't think should be a thing. And Trump said in his executive order, any monies, that government is sending over to them, is going to be minimized or altogether removed, for grants and whatever business stuff. I'm not entirely sure. So I have to look into more details about that specific aspect of it. The thing that makes me cautiously optimistic is that this will have an impact on the companies. Now, will it mean that Twitter will crash and burn? Probably not. Will it mean that they would be heavily impacted by this opening of floodgates of liability? Darn tootin'. I would say darn tootin'. I would definitely say that they've been opening themselves up for lawsuits and liability for quite a while now. So there's a lot of companies that, not a lot of companies, but there are a lot of content creators, a lot of influencers, and a lot of people that just use the platform that have been abused by Twitter and brutalized by their policies, their uneven-handedness of enforcing their policies. Through that, people have been brutalized and abused. So, it's about darn time that something happens, and I'm cautiously optimistic that this may actually force these platforms, which, let's be objective for a moment. These platforms have they have potential to be used for good. They have potential to be used as a forum for discussion, for real discussion. You can, if people were more reasonable instead of trying to harass other people, attack other people. These platforms can be a wonderful exchange of content and ideas and a wonderful marketing tool. Let's not forget the marketing aspect of it, because that's one big important thing. Twitter, Facebook, for the longest time, YouTube, they have been used by companies to market products for advertising, to gain a larger exposure of their brand. So these platforms have a use. They have a good utility. The problem is the people running these companies. They think that because they have some influence on their platform, and in many cases outside, they feel that they have some sort of obligation or duty, or it's just their personal agenda. They want to use the wealth and power that they've amassed for their own selfish, greedy, narcissistic reasons. That's it. That's all it is. So I'm glad to see, and like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic about what is to come out of this. Which another cautiously optimistic thing that may come out of this is the growth and exposure of other platforms, such as Gab.com, Parler.com, Minds.com. I feel that all these other alternatives to Twitter will get more sunlight, essentially. More people will be aware, and I think it's especially important that in this process, there is also a tightening of how social media and governments work together. So, one of the biggest problems, apart from the fact that, well, let's look at Twitter for a moment, because we're talking primarily about Twitter. And one of the biggest problems that I see with Twitter is that government entities are using this, and they're hand in hand. Hey, Solda, absolutely, it's available on demand. Absolutely, you'll have the replay in bitwave.tv here, but I'm also eventually going to upload it to BitChute. So if you can't watch it right now, no problem. I'm still going to do my show, and anybody that wants to catch the replay, feel free. It's perfectly fine. But the thing that I was saying about the social media is that they're working hand in hand. I mean, Jack Dorsey has made it very clear that he goes along with the left and the Democrat partisanship that they show. On the other side of things, you have nobody that really defends the conservatives on those platforms. It's very heavy-handed, left-leaning, and you've had on all these other media platforms purgings and shadow banning and just a ridiculous amount of arbitrary rules apply to only one group of people. And this is the catalyst for those that may have lived under a rock. The catalyst was this quote-unquote fact-checking that they put on one of President Trump's tweets, which itself was incorrect. That's the beauty of it. The fact-check that was supposed to say, hey, get the correct facts about the mail-in ballots thing, because Trump was saying there's a lot of corruption that can come out of it. It turned out that they were incorrect, and Jack Dorsey himself came out saying, "Yeah, actually, we had to make some corrections on that." So it is a cluster. Basically, it is a cluster F. It's a bag of a mess. Basically, the thing that I'm a bit leery of in all of this kind of ties in with what social media people like Jack Dorsey have said. They have said that they want regulation. They want government to step in to regulate them. I don't like that. I don't like that the government has to come in and tell websites and media platforms what to do. I really have a problem with that because whenever government touches something, it ends up being a disaster. Okay? It never works out for the better. If there is a control that is exerted from government, more likely than not, it is going to cause a lot of problems, just say the least. You know? So we're in this situation now that the government's going to have to step in and start slapping some people around to make people behave. Now, right now that we have like a president that I feel is the president that we need in this time, I don't think it's a bad thing. You have someone else like an Obama or a Clinton or Al Gore or a Biden or something like that. I feel that exertion of power from government on technical platforms, one, sets a bad precedent. And then on top of that, I feel that if they felt like expanding upon that into other types of platforms, that really becomes a cancer on the internet and how the internet works. And the freedom of the internet, I think that's a bad thing. What I do think President Trump should do, and I made several tweets about this. This isn't the first time I've talked about it. I may have even talked about it on stream before. I don't recall off the top of my head. But let's say I did. Regardless, I'll repeat myself. So what I feel that President Trump should do is, if there are, I mean, I know government has stepped in the past with monopolies, and that's fine. That's fine. Antitrust, okay, I get that. On top of that, though, I feel that President Trump should not be using Twitter. And before people harp on me, hear me out. I'm not saying that Trump shouldn't use social media. I'm saying he just shouldn't use Twitter specifically. Twitter has gained so much power and attention because of the fact that he is on there. What I think Trump should do is remove some authority from Twitter. And by doing so, he'll enhance other media platforms and create a real competitive marketplace. So this is what I mean. If I were President Trump, what I would do is this. In this executive order, or maybe in another one accompanying this, or legislation that will accompany this, I would put forth rules saying any government employee, which means anybody that's hired, appointed, elected, including the President of the United States, justices of the Supreme Court, senators, representatives, their pages, their office staff, everybody that works within the bubble of government should not be using Twitter, should only be using a social media platform that actually abides by our Constitution, especially when it comes to free speech, such as Gab.com or Parler or something like that. So the government would have a official, and I would put it under the umbrella of record keeping. For record keeping purposes, you should not be using platforms that are actively working against what the Constitution protects in its amendments. So I feel that, let's say that President Trump says the approved platform will be Gab, or the approved platform will be Minds, or the approved platform will be Parler. Okay. On the flip side of that, that means that any official accounts have to go through that platform now. There would not be an official Senator Kamala Harris account on Twitter. She would be disallowed to do that, to use that. She would have to go to another platform. The president himself would have to go to another platform. Vice president, Speaker of the House, senators, representatives. So everybody in government would have to go to the designated record keeping designated account and platform. Not account. They would go to the designated platform. They would create an official account. They can verify it, have the little check mark or whatever the equivalent it is on Gab or on Parler or on Minds or whatever. They could do that. And that's where the official tweets or posts or Gabs or echoes and things like that would occur. Now, if they wanted to have a duplicate account on Twitter and maintain that, that's up to them at that point. But the thing is, anything that they officially use, they would have to switch apps. They would have to switch platforms. That would be mandated by record keeping. That's what I would do. And then if President Trump and everybody is forced, all the check marks have to move over. Government check marks have to move over to a different platform. I promise you that I don't think everybody would migrate over, because you're gonna have some diehards that are gonna stick with Twitter no matter what because of their partisanship. But I promise you, you're between opening Twitter and social media up for liability, between a mass migration of user base, between a sell-off of stock, because now that companies are liable for what they're doing, their stock prices are going to drop. Their stakeholders are not going to be happy about that, because that means these companies are going to have to start defending themselves. And defending themselves a lot with a slew of lawsuits. Because there was also another thing in the executive order regarding commerce, that if they're engaging in blocking commerce, and it had to do with the Commerce Clause, which in the case of Twitter, they have done. They actually have done that, where they block people from advertising, like Dan Bongino. Dan Bongino can't put his ads up because they block him, because he's a conservative. So that's what I mean. Is like there's a lot of impact that these companies will have because of this executive order. And on top of that, if Trump did what I say about the social media migration, it would basically be the end of Twitter and Facebook, Instagram, YouTube as we know it. It won't eliminate them. And that's not really the goal. I don't think that they would get eliminated, but they would definitely shrink in influence. They would definitely shrink in power, and they would have to make some major changes to their terms of services. They'd have to make some major changes to how they behave and enforce their rules. So I think that overall there's going to be a net positive out of all of this when it comes to that sort of thing. So I think I've said my piece on that. I think that's good. Before I move on to the next topic, as always, please support my channel and other conservatives. But since you're listening to me, please support me. I'd appreciate that. Go to streamlabs.com/theeternalabyss and provide some level of generosity as you see fit. I really appreciate that. Anything you can do is helpful, and anything you can do is great to try and make this this show grow, and I like to make this grow. Without an audience, without support, this cannot continue indefinitely. And I would absolutely love to continue this indefinitely. And heck, I would love to do this daily if I could, and make a whole production out of it. But I can't do that without you. So please support me. Streamlabs.com/TheEternalAbyss. Any level of generosity is greatly appreciated. Moving on to the next topic. We have some really, really interesting things happening right now. Excuse me. Just finishing up my drink here. The past 4 days, right now, Minneapolis is on fire. There's riots, there's violence, there's even a shooting, like someone got killed, all because of an individual named, I just want to make sure I don't mess the name up, George Floyd. George Floyd was a black man who was allegedly killed by 4 policemen. One in particular was had him pinned down by his knee. He apparently choked to death because of that. And now the whole Black Lives Matter rioting, race war incitement, and race baiting from the media and celebrities and leftist politicians they turned it up to 11, basically. So, some background. Again, for those that may have been living under a rock. What has happened is there's still details coming out. So actually, let me premise this with a thought. We don't know all the details. Okay? Anybody that makes a pronunciation on this, including myself, anyone that makes a pronunciation on this and a proclamation saying this happened, this party is guilty, this party is innocent, this party is this party is that, they do not know what in the hell they are talking about, because we don't know all the details. I promise you, we don't know all the details. More video clips are coming out, more body cam footage, more details and investigations are being details are coming down. Investigations are being performed. I don't even know if an autopsy report has come out yet. I have not heard of any autopsy report yet. So we don't even know the exact cause of death. From what I saw, maybe there is a report out and I haven't seen it. That's a possibility. I may just be not informed at that point. But I don't know. But moving on. Allegedly, this is what I could gather has happened in this whole scenario. So you had Mr. Floyd, who the police were called because this man apparently paid with a fraudulent $10 or $20 bill. I've seen different accounts from this, I believe it's a Chinese restaurant. It's called Dragon Walk, if I'm not mistaken. By the owner, Rashad something. I don't have the name right in front of me, so forgive the misdetails there. Let me check my volume here. I touched something. Okay. Yeah, no, it's all good. All right. So the police came, stopped him at his car, because they were right next to the restaurant. They hadn't even left. They were still there. They were in the car. 2 police officers came over. One engaged the 2 passengers. One engaged George Floyd. Now there is video footage. I'm not going to go and show it because since I'm streaming also to YouTube, it seems like no matter what I play on YouTube, there's some copyright on something, on everything. So I'm not going to bother with that just yet because I don't have the time or resources to try and fight every single copyright strike against me from YouTube. So suffice to say, from what I've seen, I'm just going to kind of verbally go over it, and then we'll just kind of we'll try and analyze it that way for now. What ended up happening was in this situation, at least in the video that I could see, was I've seen 3 clips of this whole thing. And from what I could see, there was a discussion. Mr. Floyd was cuffed and pulled out of the car. You can't see if there's anything happening at that point, but there seems to be some strange happenings. Not necessarily, I'm not going to claim it's resisting arrest or not, because again, it's indeterminate at this point. I can't determine in the videos whether it is or not. What I can determine is that George Floyd gets pulled up from seems like the ground, or at least from the seat up against the door. Then he's brought over to where the restaurant is in cuffs. And throughout the entire ordeal, George Floyd has kind of a wince in his face. And he's moving kind of oddly. And then he flops down next to the restaurant on the ground. And then there's a discussion. You don't really hear the discussion. And in another video, a lot of the audio is muted because of personal information that's being exchanged between officers and the alleged perpetrators in this case. So you don't hear a lot of the details of that. It's mostly muted and censored. But you could see there's some discussion going on because the police officer is like pointing to himself, pointing to the other cops or whatever, like, because other cops then come along. And then he is brought over to another cruiser, which is on the opposite side of the street, away from the restaurant. And then he flops down again, and he has kind of a strange walk. I don't know why he's walking that way. I can only speculate. I don't know if it's a physical condition. I don't know if it's chemically induced in some way. I don't know if he was drinking or if he had something in his system. I don't know what the toxicology is in this scenario. Maybe that's just his cadence and how he walks. I don't know. But he just flops down again. And then the video cuts out. You don't know what happened between him being on the ground. There's a gap, an unknown, and next thing you know is the next video that was the first video that many saw was that video, in fact, that the police officers put his knee on him. And he says, I can't breathe. And then he starts making like gurgling noises and things like that. And then he becomes immobile and the paramedics are called. All the while, you have a crowd gathering, an altercation, verbal altercation between police officers and the crowd. And the result is that this individual passed away. This individual died. Now, you've had many pronouncements of celebrities, politicians, mainstream media, all bringing up the fact that it was a white man who had his knee on a black man, and the black man died. Everybody's screaming racism. Everybody's screaming, all the Black Lives Matter slogans, that the police are, they're hunting down black people, they're killing black people, etc., etc. Now, I say to everyone, take a deep breath, hold it in for a second, let it out. We don't know what happened, okay? All we know is that something occurred between one point of the arrest to him being pinned down for one reason or another. We know that this officer allegedly had multiple complaints put against him. So this officer may have had a history of using excessive force. And if that is the case, and the um management of the police station and his superiors did not address this, then they surely should be held responsible. And the police officer himself, if excessive force was used and the other police officers did not intervene, they should be fired, and they were rightfully fired. But they should be fired if indeed they are responsible for this. After the investigation, I feel that a non-paid suspension during the investigation would have been just fine. I understand the wanting to act quickly, and they just fired them. Okay, fine. But again, we don't know all the details. I saw some media hubbub over an individual. I think another officer from another city was saying if he can speak, that means he could breathe, and he's been catching a lot of crap for that. While I understand people being upset over him saying that, because it is insensitive to say something like this in this stage right now, even though it's technically true. That still doesn't mean that that's the best approach in terms of subduing an individual, and it's not the best approach in trying to calm people down about this. Because really, right now, that's the best thing that people need to do, is just take a deep breath, take a step back, and another thing, and just take it easy. And then on top of that, another thing is, again, the main claim of racism. There's no evidence that race was a motivation here. There is just no evidence of that. There is no evidence that the police officer had a history of being abusive towards only black perpetrators, for example. There is no known history of any of the police officers in having anything racist in their histories. Like, I haven't heard any. Maybe something can come out. Maybe something will come out about them being, part of the KKK. But if they start accepting Asian police officers into the KKK and other ethnicities in there, I'd be a little surprised. That's just me. But I know this is no laughing matter, but I mean, at the point that I'm trying to put across here is that it's very easy to jump to conclusions. It's very easy to try and point fingers, and it's very easy to feel anything, honestly, about a situation like this. Feel anger, frustration. It's a difficult situation for everybody that's personally involved, and then everybody else that's an observer looking in. It's difficult for them as well. So I would say right now you have insane riots happening. You have all this craziness going on. I would say you're not serving any cause here. By perpetrating false claims of racism, by perpetrating like incitement of violence, like you have, was it Coolio? I think it was either Coolio or LL Cool J. I could be wrong, which someone can correct me on that. He was saying, how many times do they have to hit us until we hit back? That is absolutely the wrong attitude to take on this situation. This isn't about creating an us versus them kind of thing. You don't want to turn this into an adversarial thing and incite people to violence. Stuff like that, that's incitement of violence. That whoever said that was on Twitter, he should be removed, because that's a violation of the terms of use, first of all. But beyond that, that should not be the first response that someone has to some sort of tragedy of this kind. So, just kind of bringing it all back for a moment, I say, let's get the facts. Let's get all the facts, and if these policemen are responsible, then they obviously should face the consequences of their crimes. They should be facing jail time. They should be losing their pensions. They should, whatever the consequences are, I'm perfectly okay with them facing it if they indeed are guilty and found guilty. And they should be, and we should use our system to find these individuals guilty. This destruction of the community that these people live in, destroying businesses, you're hurting your neighbors. Why are you hurting your fellow neighbors that work at Target or at a bodega or at a shop or anything like that? What are you accomplishing? Going around looting and attacking people, which they attacked a woman in a wheelchair, and some people say she had a knife. There was one video that seemed like she did. I don't know. Either way, what it boils down to is that attacking each other, attacking people, attacking businesses, burning and rioting and looting, how does that fix anything? How does that resolve the issue of police brutality? How does that resolve the issue of racism, if indeed race was an issue here, which we don't know, and as of yet, nobody has been able to show me a shred of evidence that race had anything to do with this man's death. Nothing. And the fact that the mayor of Minneapolis, this moron, is saying, oh, if he was white, he'd be alive today. You don't know that. You don't know that. It is highly irresponsible to say something like that. Stuff like that is what makes me angry when I hear that, because you're making people angrier. You're not helping the situation at all when you're doing and saying things like that. That's a problem. So right now, riots are still going. I don't know what's going to happen in Minneapolis. I guess the stay-at-home orders be damned, huh? So it's pretty funny, though, like when you think about it, that everybody was saying, this and that about the stay-at-home orders, that you can't you can't disobey the stay-at-home orders. Be respectful of others. It's a sign of respect. It's a moral thing to do. But nobody's saying to these people rioting, you should stay at home. that we're complaining about the stay-at-home thing. So the last thing I want to talk about, speaking of stay-at-home, is a little bit about the situation here with the COVID stuff, and there's some interesting data coming through. Where you have states that are opened and reopening, where the visits, people that go to the mall, numbers of people going to malls, the cases, the COVID cases and deaths, the people going to commercial areas for shopping, and going back to the kind of like the normal lifestyle, is pretty much almost at pre-COVID levels. So I think that's a wonderful thing, actually. I think that's a very, very good sign that things will return to a level of normalcy. They will. And I think that's a wonderful thing. The fact that the states that are opened, their numbers have not increased. There hasn't been any spike or giant surge, as some tried to predict. So far, at least, there hasn't been any surge. I think that's also another great positive sign. It means that things can return to a certain level of normalcy. Hey, Spook. Malls are going to be destroyed. They were already on the decline. Maybe so. I mean, I know in terms of retail, retail retail is being overwhelmed by online retail, and that's something that definitely retail companies need to look into. But that's a discussion for another time, because I think you have seen certain retail outlets that survive and function while others don't fare so well when trying to go into the online world. And certain products do better in brick and mortar versus certain products that don't really require to be brick and mortar. So I definitely I say there's a maybe, because there's a lot of factors to that. It isn't just a black and white situation. But going back to what I was talking about with the COVID thing, so the biggest thing that you're seeing coming from all this data that's coming in now, is that it really seems like right now the whole stay at home, locking things down, forcing businesses to close, forcing people to lose their freaking jobs and their livelihoods, it seems like it was somewhat, if not wholly, unnecessary. I mean, it appears that with the states open and COVID still being around, that the numbers aren't spiking, in especially the red states, because of how they managed it. There's this research that came out from the Pew Institute, which many people consider the gold standard, and it shows that the surge really came from all the blue states and cities, while the red states, from the very beginning until present, they started to climb, and then it flattened they controlled it very quickly, and it's been on a decline since. There is a decline on the blue states as well, but it was a huge curve in terms of the spike. It really went up, and now it's really coming down. And I think it goes to show you. I think it really goes to show you that there wasn't a need for such a draconian response. Hi, Mom Patch. Yep, it was way over projected, and they ran with it. Absolutely, Mom Patch. You're absolutely right. And I'm glad you could join us, Mom Patch. I'm always happy to see you listening in on my stream. So this brings about certain questions. It brings about the motivations and why governors and mayors and politicians wanted so badly to shut down. No, what I'm saying, Big Fathead, is that if you looked at the numbers, you see that where people did a horrific job, mostly New York City, California, Michigan, things like that, the blue states, you have a ginormous spike in the numbers. But even those numbers do not come close to what was projected. Okay? So because it doesn't even come close to what was projected, what you see is that the draconian level of shutdown really isn't what had a major impact on the numbers. What had a major impact was more so individual areas that had high concentrations of demographics, of people, were the worst affected, because not necessarily only because of the fact that there was a high concentration of people in those areas, it was because of the poor mismanagement of the situation. So taking New York City, for example, or taking California, for example, California ignored the travel order And they apparently they still are. I saw a report on Tucker Carlson where you have still to today millions of people being brought in from countries that shouldn't be traveling. And then there's also that, Mom Pat, you're absolutely right. You have the hospitals were incentivized because they were getting money for their cases. That's absolutely true, and that's a pretty big problem too. So so that's a big problem. And that's not to say that every red state is going swimmingly. But if you're looking at the overall numbers are not nearly as bad with the Pew with the Pew Research data that has come in. So I think that the draconian measures that were used in many places, I feel that they were overstepping a lot. I feel that if this was taken seriously earlier on, such as, Pelosi saying to go to Chinatown, or de Blasio saying to go to, in March, to go to New York for a movie thing, and the head, the health commissioner of New York City, inviting people for Chinese New Year, going to parades and things like that. Take the subway, nothing's gonna worry, nothing goes. And then on top of that, Cuomo doesn't even, or even De Blasio, Cuomo or De Blasio, they don't clean the subways until now. They're deciding, like a week or 2 weeks ago, they decided, oh yeah, we should disinfect them every night. I mean, there's a lot of poor decision making. That's what it boils down to. It's a lot of poor decision making, and I don't think that we had to shut down our country for this. Should we have taken steps to ensure people's safety? Yeah, sure. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. Should we clean surfaces, and should the city make sure the subways are clean if you work and live in the city? That should have been done even before COVID. I mean, that's a given. That has nothing to do with the COVID stuff. And that should be something that should have been done in every place in the United States to reduce. Yeah, and that is true, Monpesh. Health has become political. We've made health political, and it's about power grab now, which brings me to the wonderful governor of Michigan that is always in the news because she's doing such wonderful stuff all the time, right? So, the latest and greatest, I want people to hear this because this is just beautiful. So, her husband, beforehand, let's give you some backstory. It seems like the governor of Michigan had put this order in saying you can't go on a boat in the middle of the water by yourself because COVID. Because being in the middle of water by yourself, that's dangerous, apparently. On your boat. That got lifted recently, and I believe there's some restrictions. I don't know all the details about how many boats can go out at a time or whatever, but there's restrictions. And there's a queue, basically. There's a line to get your boat. So, her husband calls in to the dock people and says, "Oh, hey, yeah, I want to get my boat out." And the guy says, "Oh, well, we can't do that. There's a long line ahead of you." And the governor goes, "Do you know who I am? I'm the what was that, troll? You need to stop. The CDC can't fight Corona and the STDs you keep giving dudes." You're mistaken. I don't go. I don't swing that way. So, but basically, I don't play for that team. But basically, the governor's husband tells him that basically he's trying to use his position as husband of the governor to get his boat. Exactly, Mom Patch. Do you know who I am? Kind of deal. and this is the cherry on top is this. Okay, there was a lot of controversy about that apparently, and I mean it reached national news. That's why I know about it as well. So there's all this craziness. Okay, and the best part is up until now, Whitmer hadn't really responded to a lot of her criticisms. Every time she was criticized, she would just go on the news and say, "Oh, they're just racist. They're just Nazis. They're just evil people. They're just, they're just this and that." She just vilified everybody that criticized her, never really addressed any criticism directly. This time, she actually comes out and says, "I'm actually going to address this." But first, she goes onto this big tirade of playing the victim card. Oh, my children had to see people protest me. Oh, people with guns are showing up or are protesting me. Oh, etc., etc. It's like, well, listen, I don't want people to feel threatened. I don't want people to be insulted. I want people to get along. I want people to work together. But she cannot play the victim card when she was a primary instigator in this. And she was a primary escalator in all this. She did zero to de-escalate this situation. And as much as I don't want her children or her family to be threatened, and I don't want to see insults flinged, she did nothing, again, to de-escalate the situation. She flinged insults just as much. She persecuted people individually, removing their licenses and threatening them with the full force of a government behind her, which is much greater than any gun, mind you. That is the ultimate gun. I'm not reading anything. I'm just expressing my thoughts. Big fat head. That's the government is the ultimate gun. So now she comes out as playing the victim, and then she says, "Oh, he was just joking. It was a poor attempt at a joke." I just love it. I just love it when people use that as their excuse for something. I think it's hilarious. It's a joke, and in it and of itself, when people use it was a poor attempt at humor, or it was a joke, or it wasn't serious, or whatever. And I'm talking about anybody saying this when it obviously was not a joke. I mean, when somebody makes a joke or is trolling and it's obvious a troll, that's one thing. You can say, well, come on, the dude's obviously trolling, the dude's obviously joking. But when you have someone like, the governor of Michigan's husband saying something like that, gets caught, he won't even come up and explain himself. He has to hide behind the shield of his governor wife. Then her saying that it's a joke, I don't believe that. I don't believe it. I'm sorry. Actually, I'm not sorry. I just don't believe it. You have Joe Biden saying, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. And then he said it was a joke. Yeah, I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was. And you have, and if someone else would have said that with the last name Trump, he would have been crucified, not once, not twice, not thrice, but 1,000,000 times. But because it's Biden, the media protects him, politicians protect him, actors protect him. It's the double standard is boggling. It's mind-boggling, frankly. On top of that, let me see. There was another example that I was thinking about. Oh, Kathy Griffin, when she had the Trump head, the bloody Trump head, she said that was a joke, and now she's talking about inciting people to inject air into another human being. Oh yeah, So she's telling people to induce an embolism to kill the president of the United States. Now, I don't care what your politics are. Okay, I don't care if you're a Democrat. I don't care if you're a Republican. I don't care if you're a conservative. I don't care if you're a liberal. You don't tell people to do that. Okay? No matter how much I don't like someone, I have never, ever, ever wished death upon someone. I have never wished violence upon someone. Oh Christ! Are you really, Big Fathead? Wait, Big Fathead saying, "Oh my goodness, we gotta talk about this bitch. She's crazy. She's on her Twitter doing nude pool jumps too. Ooh, I don't think anybody should be seeing her naked." But let's not get into that. I don't want to get into the gutter about in talking about people's physical appearance. That's not what I'm interested in. The point being here is this, that what's important here is that no matter what people's politics are, and no matter what people's beliefs are, I do think that she's pretty unstable. Hey, Maxine Waters. Oh, don't start with the yo mama jokes. There has been no feet doxing, Big Fathead. I don't know what you're talking about. Uh, uh, you're planning to do a bit on her, Big Fathead. I'd be curious to see what you come up with, because I would not want to dedicate that time to her, frankly. That's just me, though. So moving on. Uh, yeah, I feel that the climate of discussion, and this is again, it kind of circles back to what I was talking about at the beginning, when you have platforms that are arbitrarily enforcing their rules. They're encouraging that behavior, because she's been doing this thing, like Kathy Griffin has been doing this thing for years. She's been threatening the president for years. She's been inciting violence for years. She's been insulting people for years. Yet Twitter blocks other people, and her account is just peachy keen. Nothing's being touched. So it's yeah, I remember that, Big Fathead. That first she apologized. She did this whole fake crocodile tear thing. Oh, he destroyed me. I remember that. I absolutely remember that. Yeah, she makes death threats, dox threats. Yeah, she's been doing that forever. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't particularly care, but but there is a part of me that does care, only because it really degrades conversations when and discussion. That's the one thing. The second thing is that Twitter itself, she's been violating the Twitter's terms of service left and right. Yet for some reason, James Woods posts a meme and he gets blocked. So it's yeah, it's a lot of these B actors and C actors and D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P actors. That really seem to need attention, and they feel that that's how they do it. I mean, just look at Alyssa Milano. Did you see Alyssa Milano's mask, by the way? Let me just conclude with this. Did you see her mask? there's been this whole campaign by like Cuomo and other people saying, wear masks, it's a sign of respect, it's a moral thing to do, and blah blah blah. And Alyssa Milano, of course, chimed in, and she had this crocheted knitted mask, and she got excoriated by social media. She had no filter. Nope, she did not, Big Fathead. She had no filter in it. And I tell you why. Because I got a picture. I looked at that picture. You were able to zoom in. And you could actually see like different layers of shadowing of like nose, lips, things like that. It wasn't very clear, but you can see it. Now, if she actually had a carbon filter in there, you would not see different layers of filter. It'd just be a solid color, right? It was not a solid color, meaning she only had the knitted mask. That was it. You can tell from the picture, actually. You could actually tell. And I even tell you this. Hey, download it, go into Photoshop, throw in a few filters, brightness, and levels. You'll see what you'll see. And you'll see that there's not going to be a filter in there. She tried to claim there was because you had some people... Maybe she had a cigarette filter in each nostril. Oh God, Maxine. No, I don't. Maybe. If she did, it's pretty high up there. I couldn't see anything. Well, she had no filter. You could not. You couldn't see anything in the photo. I zoomed in. I threw it in Photoshop because I was like, you know what? I actually tried to be fair. I actually said, let me take a look at this photo. I'm gonna look, brighten it up, look as much as I can, see what I can see. I saw no filter. Okay. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. That's true, big fat head. Trusting celebrities is stupid to begin with. Very few are real people. Yeah, you know, they're very much empty shells. They just follow whatever trend. There are some that have a little bit more brains inside their skulls than other, but you have, unfortunately, and this isn't just celebrities, this is people in general. It's unfortunate people just blind themselves with the blinders of ideology. And it's a shame. It's a real shame that people do that to themselves. It's unfortunate. So, I think that that pretty much covers all the topics, really, that I wanted to cover today. I want to thank everybody for listening in. I hope that these riots end. I hope that the stay-at-home ends. I hope that political discourse becomes a thing again, and and I do hope that this executive order that was put forth from the executive branch here, I do hope that it has a positive impact on social media, because the shadow banning and the stepping on conservative voices that has happened with Instagram / Facebook, with Twitter, with Google / YouTube, it's gone too far. It really has gone too far, and I feel that this should have been addressed sooner. I did see that Gunter Penguin. Yep, I talked about that at the very beginning of my stream, that Trump, I don't think he wants to delete Twitter, no. But I do think that he wants to right the wrongs that Twitter is currently engaged in doing, really. So I think that from what I saw about that executive order, there's some positive things. I think that these platforms should be liable for what they're doing. I don't think that they should be protected from lawsuits because they claim they're an open and objective forum when they clearly are not. There's plenty of evidence to show that they are not. Some, like Mark Zuckerberg, as I said at the beginning of the stream, he himself called Facebook a publishing platform. He didn't call it an open forum. I don't know if that was a slip or if that's truth or what have you, but that's what he himself claimed. And then you don't even need to hear them what they claim. You need to just look at what they do. And you can see from what they do, they shadow ban, they don't apply their terms of service evenly. and they just they are doing everything in their power to silence groups of people that they just don't agree with. And I think that's a horrible thing to do. But there's, like I said, there's a positive note on this, because now something can actually be changing. Something can actually start happening to try and fix the situation, and I hope it does. I hope it does. But I'm gonna call it a night. I want to thank everybody for watching. Next week, same place, same time, around 8 p.m. ish, Eastern Standard Time. I can't talk anymore. This was The Abyss, and once again, please support me. Streamlabs.com/The Eternal Abyss. Any level of generosity is appreciated, and I hope you kids had a good time. I hope everyone enjoyed the stream, and I'll see you next week. Have a good night.